I went to design school, and for the past 25 years, I have taught graduate design students. My first job in New York City, my first job was for what they refer to as a modern American master. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the most important elements of becoming a good designer were never in the curriculum. They're not on the syllabus. They are also not in your typical YouTube design videos. Now, this video is about that shadow curriculum. It's about the important components of your education that were left out of design school or left out of your education. Now, I'm going to make you a kind of absurd promise that in this one video, that I'm going to give you the shadow curriculum. I'm going to give you that syllabus that you need. Now, I'm not going to tell you in this video that education is a scam, because quite frankly, I don't believe that. I don't think that it is. I run a graduate program that, quite frankly, is killer, and those are just facts. So I'm still very much pro-academy, but I think that you can learn outside of that context. Now, here is the deal. If you stick with me, I'm going to give you a plan. I'm going to give you a roadmap and a plan for self-education. This works inside of academic settings, and it works on your own. These are the things that you should have been taught but weren't. Okay, so if you're in school or if you're out on your own, learning on your own, you definitely need a plan. You need a stable, conceptual, and formal through line. You need to be able to figuratively chase ideas back to their lair. Now, how do you do this? Well, the first thing is that you must establish habit and consistency. An important component of education that is completely left out of the discipline of schools is daily practice. So what I'm suggesting that you do, one of the keys, one of the major ways to unlock your learning is to establish a daily practice. That would be something in the order of 45 minutes to an hour working on a single idea over time. Now, each day, you complete an idea. As an example, working on the figure in watercolor or in oil, or working on type design. And the important component is that when you're working in these 45 minutes to 1 hour daily practices, to try to understand your work as if it is an algorithm. What is an algorithm? Simply put, it is a series of steps to solve a problem. There's another analogy which is very apt, which is the recipe. To think about your work, to literally think about your work, what constitutes the thing that you're working on is a recipe. 10 ingredients, 3 processes. And then each day to work the ideas, the conceptual and formal ideas, to think about those 10 different steps or 10 different elements and to modify one of them. To assess at the end of the day, or at the beginning of each day, the success or failure based upon your own rubric, based upon your own understanding of the work, and to modify, to work 1 out of 10 components, not to change 3, not to change 5. In order to have a stable and consistent through line, conceptual and formal through line, what we want to do is we want to establish a daily practice of 45 to 60 minutes where we complete a study, and where in that process, what we're doing is we're trying to analyze the thing that we're working on, not necessarily intellectually, by the way, and then modifying 1 or at the most 2 of the elements in the work. Now, I'm going to try and give you an example, a specific example of what I'm referring to here. So let's take a look here. So here are 3 actual examples of what I'm referring to. This is something that I've shown on my channel before. This is a series of course, we have sirens in the background. This is a series of paintings on paper that are part of a daily practice that we see here. And then below them are just a small portion of landscape studies in oil that each one of these is a 45-minute landscape study in oil. I've shown these on my channel, and we can see works on paper. Those are an example of 45-minute long studies. They are done here at this workstation. You can see other examples back on the back wall.
This is an example of what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the second most important point is a conversation that some of you may be aware of and may not be aware of, and it is to be wary of the de-skilled art object. Now, this is a conversation, again, that you might not be aware of, but over the course of the past 30 years, there has been a relentless emphasis within educational circles to de-skill your work. Now, the de-skilled object, art object, is effectively where bad equals good, and it is mostly bullshit. Now, it's not always bullshit, and it is not universally bullshit, but it is mostly bullshit. Now, it's the refuge, mind you, of the weak, both intellectually and formally. So if you're not part of art and design school, you're probably not familiar with this conversation, might have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's still an important part of the shadow curriculum. The short version of this is that, again, over the course of the past 30 years, there has been a relentless encouragement within academic circles, within schools, to make bad work. This shit is the fucked up residue of postmodernist relativism, and it can destroy you as an artist, and quite frankly, destroy your capacity to think. And it is a form of postmodern brain rot. Now, my advice is that when you receive this encouragement from a mentor or from your professor, you have to think very carefully about it and take it very seriously. But the encouragement that I would give you is to look very closely at their work. Now, what is the point, and how does this idea form part of the shadow curriculum, both inside of school or academic environments, as well as if you're learning on your own? Well, really what it is that I would give you the encouragement to never forget that anti-mastery comes after mastery. As an example, a perfect example is that if you hand someone an acoustic guitar, you will instantly know whether or not they can play. There is absolutely no hiding when you hand someone a musical instrument like an acoustic guitar, whether or not they have put in that work. And I would go so far as to say that even when we are looking at quote-unquote bad work or de-skilled work, you're not fooling anyone. We can tell whether or not the artist has been committed and put in that work. So point number 2 in this shadow curriculum is to be wary, very wary of the de-skilled art object and the encouragement to de-skill your work. All right, number 3, master copy to mastery. I've made a couple of videos on this, but one of the things that they don't talk about in undergraduate or even graduate education, it's really frowned on to copy works. The further back in your development as a musician, artist, writer, designer, the more I would suggest that it's important to copy, to master copy. Now, the important components that I'm going to point out are that the key is to combine dissimilar elements from great works until the logic is kind of baked into both your psyche and into the material and corporeal, the bodily intelligence that makes up our hands. And then the point is to forget this. So I'm going to cross-pollinate 2 different ideas right here by showing you some things from one of my many sketchbooks, right? This idea of daily practice and master copy. So here we see, as an example, here we see an American Gothic where I am both copying and not copying. And here we see the cross-pollinating of Philip Guston with Italian Renaissance painting. Now these are very quick. These are quick master copies, right? They're very quick. This is again 35 to 40 minutes, and they're in gouache. But the point really is to involve yourself in a process of trying to understand the deep baked-in logic of work that is powerful in a way. And part of the shadow curriculum is to copy. I'm gonna link to a video here that I made on this specific process. Okay, and then number 4, process is the product. comprehensively document all of your development. Take your notes, photos, sketches, drawings, text threads, literally everything, and process all of this first into an understanding of your own work like this. So keep comprehensive documentation of your work, and then process all of this as a way of trying to come to a deeper understanding of those things that you do. So at the very least, notes, use an application like Day One or Apple, the notes file on your iPhone, but to keep and to record comprehensive documentation of your work, and then secondarily use that as a framework for others to understand your work. I use this work by Reed Smith, who was is a graduate of my graduate department, as an amazing example of this product. This is a process book. Ed Ryan's process book, among others, is also a pretty incredible piece. But really, what these things are is they're a way of simultaneously coming to a deeper understanding of our own work by drawing connections between ideas and by drawing connections between the various things that we're working on, but to utilize our sketches, our photographs, our documents, our process, our text messages, and our thoughts as products in and of themselves. It is rare that you find in educational environments such an emphasis placed on kind of almost archaeology of our process. And number 5, digital craftsmanship. The fact is that we live in a digital world, and that behind nearly every great piece of design, the unfortunate fact is that someone with a killer digital skill set is behind those pieces, whether it's CAD, Illustrator, 3D printing, CNC, Social Media, Logic Pro, Ableton, TikTok. There is such a thing as digital craft, and basically my suggestion to you is that get a cup of tea on a Friday night, every Friday night for a year, and grind on software. So much of killer design, if I'm keeping it 100, is constituted by killer digital craft. If we want to simplify it even further, we could think about Skrillex, Breakins, Diplo. We could think about Trent Reznor or Tim Hecker. Somewhere in that signal chain, somewhere in that production chain, we find people who have amazing, absolutely amazing digital skills. Listen to a Skrillex track and try to convince me that somewhere in that chain is not someone who is an absolute assassin with the digital tools. If we are really being honest about particularly design, we find digital production and we find digital craft lies at the very heart of that work. So making sure that you're dedicated to understanding and to learning the tools is a critical component in the shadow curriculum. And number 6, modal making. This is a super important concept. Research and making are different processes, and they require and engage different faculties, different components of the psyche and the body. Don't push them together. Read, think, evaluate, draw connections between elements, and intellectualize in mode 1. In mode 2, forget all of that and make and vibe. It is another mode. Don't force these two together. So, hey, yesterday, actually 2 days ago, I ran an experiment, private Zoom consultations. I did a first come, first serve link through Calendly, where the first people that signed up got a 20-minute private Zoom consultation with me. We talked about people's portfolios, we talked about life and work, we talked about virtually any of the subject matter that was on this channel, or life as a designer or an artist. It was kind of like the comments section of YouTube come to life. And quite frankly, I didn't know what to expect, but it was killer. I met some really, really cool people, quite frankly. I am going to do this again. I'm planning on doing it again within the month. It will be a random drop with no warning. I will post a video announcing it with a link in the comments. The first to sign up will get a 20-minute private Zoom consultation with me, and yeah, it'll give you motivation potentially to hit the bell icon to let you know when my videos drop. It's more, for me, it's more about developing a sense that in art and design, it's really important to feel like you're part of a community, and that that you're in dialogue with people, which is the next point of this video. But so these 20-minute private Zoom consultations were really a way of trying to understand who this channel is actually speaking to and what the issues that mean something to people are. It was fantastic. But that is the next point in the shadow curriculum. And this brings me to my final point for this episode. 6-7, number 6-7. That's for the kids out there. 6-7. Point 6 or 7 is mentoring and community. So the final point in this episode is about the idea that you gotta be making your work. You absolutely have to be making your work in and among people. You gotta get critical feedback from a community. It could be online, it could be in meet space, but the vacuum is bad. You can't work in outer space. David Bowie warned us of these problems. You need someone basically to tell you when something's not working. You need someone to illuminate the Jungian shadow for you. Now, the best possible way to do this clearly is to get a mentor. Not some blowhard wanker that doesn't know shit, but a gangster who knows what time it is. Somebody who is older or potentially more experienced than you to help you get your shit straight. So work in a community. That is point 6-7. 6-7. That's not going to age very well now, is it? Anyway, so I appreciate you taking the time. I recorded this video previously, and I did it in a very bombastic way, you know. I went way over the top in terms of my delivery because, quite frankly, the YouTube algorithm rewards bombast. And so this video is a couple days late because I decided, fuck it, I can't do that. It's not good. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, it would, you'd do me a big favor by typing in the comments below. I read all the comments. I try to respond to all of them. I've been pretty busy recently. And then, subscribing if you're one of the very many people who watch the channel who are unsubscribed, and then all that bullshit. But until next time, and until I drop my next private consultation 20-minuters, peace.